The day my grandparents died in a car crash, their attorney dropped a bombshell. I was a sole heir to their $26 million estate. My family instantly demanded I hand it over. I refused. That very night, they threw me out. I retreated to my grandparents' empty home. The next morning, my relatives arrived, intent on evicting me, but they froze. Their expressions hardened into stunned disbelief when they saw who stood by my side, That gut-wrenching feeling. When your entire world shatters, not by some random twist of fate, but by the very people sworn to love you. That was my reality, just 6 weeks ago. I woke up an unexpected millionaire, yet, on that same night, my own parents evicted me, rendering me homeless. Their reason: my unwavering refusal to surrender a single cent to the $26 million. My grandparents had entrusted to me. My name is Natalie, and I'm 27. Before this upheaval, I was simply a kindergarten teacher, navigating life paycheck to paycheck in a modest apartment. My existence was unassuming, but it was authentically mine. Much of that grounded simplicity, and honestly, a significant part of who I am, stemmed from my grandparents, Elizabeth and Harold. They nurtured me far more than my biological parents ever did. They possessed immense wealth, yet you'd never guess it from their unassuming demeanor. They instilled in me the profound truth that character far outweighs currency. It was a lesson that would soon face the ultimate, cruelest test. When their lives were tragically cut short in that horrific car accident, it felt as though my entire world had disintegrated. Then came the attorney's meeting, where I learned they had bequeathed their entire $26 million fortune to me. And, just like that, the family who had barely graced them with a visit in years suddenly craved every last penny. I stood my ground. If you're curious to witness how money truly strips away pretense and exposes people's true colors, then stick around, because the story only gets uglier. Growing up, my parents, Richard and Diane, were perpetually physically present but emotionally distant. My father clocked 60 weeks, consumed by his relentless climb up the corporate ladder. My mother meticulously cultivated her social network, ensuring she was always seen with the right people. Family dinners were a rarity, typically punctuated by urgent work calls or elaborate social planning. They provided the essentials, certainly, but genuine warmth and meaningful guidance were conspicuously absent. From the tender age of 5, my true sanctuary became my grandparents' humble 4-bedroom house. I spent every weekend and entire summers there. Despite their considerable affluence, they embraced a remarkably simple lifestyle. Their sprawling 3-acre property boasted a bountiful vegetable garden, where Grandpa Harold patiently taught me the joy of cultivating tomatoes and zucchini. Grandma Elizabeth meticulously showed me how to bake cookies from scratch and skillfully mend torn buttons. They were unwavering presences at every school play, every soccer game, every pivotal milestone my parents routinely overlooked. My grandparents meticulously forged their fortune from scratch. They launched a nascent logistics company from their garage in the 1970s, armed with just a single truck and an audacious dream. By the time I was born, Alexander Logistics had blossomed into a regional powerhouse, commanding a fleet of 200 trucks and 5 warehouses spread across 3 states. Yet, their vast net worth remained a carefully guarded secret. Grandpa drove the same reliable pickup truck for 2 decades. Grandma diligently clipped coupons and sought out clothes on sale. Their mantra was always the same: money is merely a tool, Natalie, not a measure of your worth, employed to construct something meaningful, not to impress those who hold no genuine significance. This guiding philosophy was precisely what carved the immense chasm between them and my father. As their sole son, he grew up with the entitlement of inheriting everything and living a life of extravagant luxury. He openly resented their frugality, deriding them as stingy and old-fashioned. What he perceived as deprivation, they viewed as essential character building. They fully funded his college education, yet expected him to diligently work summer jobs. Upon his graduation, they provided a down payment for a modest starter home, a far cry from the opulent condo he truly coveted. The definitive rupture occurred when my father audaciously demanded a senior position within their company. Despite his glaring lack of relevant experience, my grandparents steadfastly refused, asserting he needed to earn it like everyone else. He stormed out, opting for a corporate job instead, and their relationship remained irrevocably fractured. For me, they adopted a profoundly different approach. They fully covered my education, enabling me to graduate entirely debt-free. More importantly, they wholeheartedly encouraged me to pursue a career rooted in passion rather than mere profit. When I declared my intention to become a kindergarten teacher, they were genuinely ecstatic. Even though my starting salary barely surpassed minimum wage, throughout my adult life, I meticulously nurtured a deep, enduring bond with my grandparents. We honored a sacred tradition of Sunday dinners every single week, I patiently guided them through the maze of new technology, setting up their smartphones and demonstrating the wonders of video chat. In return, they lovingly shared their cherished family recipes and recounted captivating tales of their youth. During holidays, I invariably chose to stay with them instead of my parents' house, a decision that ignited endless friction with my mother, who interpreted it as a blatant personal rejection. I resided in a cozy, one-bedroom apartment, a mere 20-minute drive from my grandparents' home. It was compact but comforting, adorned with beloved second-hand furniture and an abundance of vibrant plants. My salary from Sunshine Elementary School was modest, yet it comfortably met my needs. I discovered profound joy in simple pleasures, losing myself in library books, exploring hiking trails in the state park, and dedicating my time to volunteering at the local animal shelter. My grandparents deeply respected my independent spirit, though they occasionally surprised me with thoughtful, practical gifts like new winter tires or a top-of-the-line blender. Then, 6 weeks ago, my world violently shifted. I was engrossed in grading papers on a quiet Tuesday evening, when the police call shattered my tranquility. My grandparents, returning from their favorite restaurant, had been broadsided by a drunk driver who ran a red light. They perished instantly. The officer assured me they didn't suffer, but his words offered scant comfort. The funeral passed in a surreal blur. I vaguely recall my parents taking charge of the arrangements, their voices sharp with argument over funeral costs. My brother, Jason, flew in from California, spending most of the time glued to his phone. Aunt Pam wept theatrically for the cameras, her tears abruptly drying the moment lenses were lowered. Uncle Steve merely lingered awkwardly in corners, a silent shadow trailing Aunt Pam. None of them had bothered to visit my grandparents in years, yet, suddenly, they were all performing the role of a grief-stricken family. I felt nothing but a profound numbness. The two people who truly understood and unequivocally supported me were gone forever. Their home, once a beacon of warmth and invitation, now stood eerily silent and empty. I couldn't bring myself to cross its threshold after the funeral. Instead, I retreated to my apartment, secured bereavement leave from school, and desperately tried to process my desolate new reality. 2 weeks following the funeral, a call came from Matthew Goldstein, my grandparents' attorney. He requested my presence, along with my immediate family, at his office for the reading of the will. Little did I comprehend how that impending meeting would fundamentally alter everything I believed. I knew about my family. The morning of the will reading arrived, gray and drizzly, perfectly mirroring my somber mood. I reached Goldstein Legal a quarter-hour early, dressed in a simple black dress and clutching the umbrella my grandmother had always insisted I keep in my car for emergencies. The office, nestled in a converted Victorian house downtown, exuded a comforting warmth with its rich wood paneling and supple leather chairs. Matthew Goldstein greeted me with a gentle, reassuring handshake, a man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes peering from behind wire-rimmed glasses. He was a figure my grandparents had often spoken of, both as their trusted attorney and a dear friend for over 3 decades. "I am truly sorry for your loss, Natalie," he murmured, his voice laced with genuine sorrow. "Elizabeth and Harold were extraordinary individuals. I will deeply miss our chess games and her famous lemon bars during our meetings." His sincere emotion brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I managed to stammer. "They spoke highly of you, too." Before we could converse further, the glass door swung open, and my family swept in as a single, imposing unit. My father, Richard, led the charge, his expensive watch constantly checked with impatient glances. At 56, he bore a stark resemblance to an older, harsher version of my grandfather. Devoid of any discernible warmth, my mother, Diane, trailed behind, her designer handbag likely worth more than my monthly rent. My 25-year-old brother, Jason, swaggered in, sporting sunglasses indoors, his idea of business attire being a wrinkled button-up shirt haphazardly tucked into jeans. Bringing up the rear were Aunt Pam, my father's younger sister, already loudly recounting a perceived slight from her country club friends on her phone, and Uncle Steve, who shuffled in behind her, offering me a polite but fleeting nod before quickly averting his gaze. They had been married for 2 decades, yet I had rarely heard him utter more than a few sentences at family gatherings. "Well, let's expedite this," my father announced brusquely, foregoing any pretense of greeting. "Some of us have actual businesses to manage." Matthew offered a thin smile. "Of course, Richard. Please follow me to the conference room. We are all assembled now." The tension in the room was almost tangible. As we settled around a massive oak table, my father deliberately claimed the head, asserting his self-appointed authority, while I chose a seat closer to Matthew. The others strategically arranged themselves according to their established alliances. My mother beside my father, Jason next to her, and Aunt Pam and Uncle Steve across from them. Before we commence, Matthew stated, his voice calm and deliberate, I wish to clarify that Elizabeth and Harold were of unequivocally sound mind. When they revised their will last year, their considerations were thorough and their wishes explicit. My father snorted impatiently. Just read it, Matt. We know the drill. Dad built the business, I'm his son. Standard inheritance procedure. Matthew seamlessly ignored the interruption. Opening a leather portfolio, he adjusted his glasses and began to read aloud. I, Harold Alexander, and I, Elizabeth Alexander, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this our last will and testament. The formal legalistic language unfolded for several minutes, with Matthew meticulously detailing revocations of previous wills and the appointment of executors. My family fidgeted with mounting impatience. Finally, he arrived at the section everyone had breathlessly awaited. We hereby bequeath our entire estate, including but not limited to all cash assets totaling approximately $8 million, our investment portfolio valued at approximately $12 million, all real estate holdings, including our primary residence, valued at $5 million, and our 25% ownership stake in Alexander Logistics, valued at approximately $1 million. To our beloved granddaughter, Natalie Grace Foster. The room plunged into an immediate, profound silence. For a moment, I ceased to breathe, certain I had misheard. Matthew continued, his voice steady. We specifically and intentionally make no provisions for our son Richard Alexander, our daughter-in-law Diane Alexander, our grandson Jason Alexander, our daughter Pamela Davis, or our son-in-law Stephen Davis, as we have provided for them generously during our lifetime and have made our reasons crystal clear to our attorney. Let me see that, my father bellowed, lunging upright so abruptly his chair toppled backward. He snatched the document from Matthew's hands, his eyes frantically scanning the page. This is preposterous, my mother chimed in, her voice shrill. $26 million to a kindergarten teacher? She wouldn't have the faintest idea how to manage that kind of money. Jason slammed his hand onto the table. What about me? I'm family, too. I need startup capital for my business ventures. And Pam whirled towards me, her face flushed with fury. What did you do? How did you manipulate them into this? I remained rooted in stunned silence, utterly incapable of processing the unfolding drama. Matthew calmly reclaimed the will from my father's white-knuckle grip. If you would all, please resume your seats. There is more. Harold and Elizabeth recorded a video message to be played at this juncture. He pressed a button on a remote, and the large screen on the wall flickered to life. My grandparents appeared, sitting side by side on their familiar living room sofa. My heart ached to see them alive again, looking precisely as they had during my last visit. Grandpa Harold spoke first. If you are watching this, it means we have passed on. We wish to explain our decisions directly, to preempt any misunderstandings. Grandma Elizabeth continued, her voice gentle but firm. Richard, Pam, we love you as our children, but we have been profoundly disheartened by the values you have embraced, and subsequently passed on to your own children. With the notable exception of Natalie, for decades my grandparents elaborated. They had observed my father and aunt consistently prioritize material wealth over genuine relationships, treating them as mere resources to exploit rather than as cherished parents. They recounted years of missed family gatherings, repeated requests for loans that were never repaid, and dismissive attitudes towards their modest lifestyle choices. The business we painstakingly built, Grandpa stated, was never about accumulating wealth for its own sake. It was about forging security for our family and creating opportunities for our employees. We built it through tireless effort, unwavering integrity, and treating people with fairness. Natalie is a sole individual who has consistently embodied these values, Grandma added. She visits us not because she seeks something, but because she genuinely cares. She chose a career dedicated to helping children, despite the meager pay, because it fulfills her deepest purpose. We trust Natalie to be a conscientious steward of all we have built. Grandpa affirmed, she will honor our legacy and deploy these resources judiciously, not squandering them on fleeting status symbols or ill-conceived, get-rich-quick schemes. The video continued for several more minutes, with my grandparents articulating their fervent hopes for how the inheritance might be leveraged to champion education and community development, causes they had always passionately supported but had limited time to pursue while managing their business empire. As the screen faded to black, my father erupted, "This is utter rubbish. They were clearly senile. We will contest this will. No judge in their right mind will uphold this insanity." Matthew remained perfectly composed. They anticipated precisely that response, Richard. They underwent exhaustive cognitive testing before finalizing this will, with multiple independent medical professionals certifying their mental acuity. Furthermore, they meticulously documented years of behaviors that directly influenced their decision. I must advise you that contesting this will be exceedingly difficult, exorbitantly expensive, and ultimately, highly improbable to succeed. My mother turned to me, her voice suddenly dripping with a syrupy sweetness. Honey, sweet Natalie. Darling, surely you understand this isn't right. Your grandparents were confused. This immense fortune belongs to the asterisk family asterisk, not solely to you. You'll share it with us, won't you? I felt trapped, every eye in the room fixed on me. I have to think about this, I stammered. Caught off guard, I had no idea they would do this. Think about it, Jason scoffed, incredulous. There's nothing to consider. That money should be divided equally, or better yet, managed by someone with actual business acumen, my father interjected, clearly referring to himself. As the arguments escalated, Matthew gently touched my arm. You are under no obligation to decide anything today, Natalie. Take the time you need to process this. My office will manage all immediate matters concerning the estate. He handed me a weighty envelope. This contains all the pertinent documents, keys to their house, and contact information for their financial advisors. Call me anytime with questions. The meeting promptly devolved into unmitigated chaos, replete with threats of lawsuits and a barrage of bitter accusations. Matthew eventually dismissed everyone, citing another appointment. As we filed out, my father seized my arm with a rough grip. This discussion is far from over. He hissed, be at our house tonight at 6. We will resolve this as a family. His tone left no doubt. This was not a request. I nodded numbly, too, overwhelmed to even attempt an argument. As they peeled away in their separate luxury vehicles, I sat in my 10-year-old sedan in the parking lot, clutching the envelope, pondering how an inheritance, ostensibly a blessing, had so rapidly transformed into an inescapable curse. I drifted through the afternoon in a daze, driving aimlessly around town before finally pulling into a quiet park to collect my scattered thoughts. Matthew's unopened envelope lay on my passenger seat. A part of me yearned to peer inside, too, grasp the full extent of what my grandparents had entrusted to me, yet another part was utterly terrified by the sheer weight of the responsibility it represented. At 5:45, I pulled into my parents' expansive driveway, noting that everyone else had already arrived. Their 5,000-square-foot house loomed before me, an edifice of cold granite and stark glass, clearly designed to impress rather than to welcome. I took a fortifying breath, retrieved the envelope, and walked inside. They awaited me in the formal living room, a space rarely utilized except for my mother's elaborate social gatherings. My father stood by the fireplace, a tumbler of scotch in hand. My mother perched precariously on the edge of an uncomfortable-looking designer chair. Jason sprawled across the sofa, scrolling dispassionately through his phone, while Aunt Pam paced nervously. Uncle Steve stood by the window, gazing out as if desperately wishing to be anywhere else. Finally, my father announced as I entered, "Sit down, Natalie." I chose a chair strategically positioned near the door, suddenly acutely aware that I might need a swift exit. "Let us approach this rationally," my father began, his voice shifting into his familiar business negotiation cadence. "Your grandparents were clearly not thinking lucidly. They intended for the entire family to benefit, not just you." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "Sweetheart, managing substantial wealth is incredibly complex. Your father possesses a requisite experience to handle this properly. You can still receive a very generous portion, perhaps enough for a down payment on a proper house instead of that cramped apartment." The condescension in her voice made my skin crawl, but I remained silent, emboldened by my lack of response. My father pressed on. "Here is our proposition. You formally sign over the estate to me, as a financial head of the family. I will ensure everyone receives their fair share. You, Natalie, will receive 10%, which is more than generous considering your limited needs. 10%. I finally found my voice. That would still be over $2 million exactly. Jason interjected, seizing the opportunity. "More than enough for a teacher. I need at least $5 million for my cryptocurrency exchange platform. It's going to be huge." I eyed him skeptically. Jason had bounced between dubious get-rich-quick schemes for years, never holding a job for longer than 3 months. His most recent venture, an app for rating public restrooms, had spectacularly imploded after burning through $50,000 of my parents' money. "The house should naturally go to us," Aunt Pam interjected, her voice sharp. "We have 3 children to consider. That neighborhood would afford them access to superior schools." I nearly chuckled at the sheer absurdity. Aunt Pam had never once visited my grandparents in that house. Her children, my cousins, were practically strangers, only sending obligatory birthday cards penned in my aunt's handwriting. As the evening wore on, their tactics evolved. When overt demands failed, they shifted to guilt. "After everything we've sacrificed for you," my mother began, her eyes dramatically moistening. We gave you life, a good home, countless opportunities. Is this how you repay family loyalty? I nearly choked on my water. Loyalty? When was the last time either of you called just to check on me? When did you ever attend even one of my school performances? My father abruptly changed strategies again. We are not asking, Natalie. We are telling you what will happen. Either you sign the transfer documents voluntarily, or we will contest the will. We will dredge up every questionable interaction you had with your grandparents. How often did you visit them alone? What did you tell them about us when we weren't there? It will get exceedingly ugly. The implied threat hung heavy in the air. I felt sick. But something deep within me hardened. A forgotten memory surfaced, my grandfather teaching me to stand my ground. During a playground dispute when I was 8. No one can take your dignity unless you give it away, Natalie, he had said. Know what is right and hold firm. Uncle Steve, who had remained conspicuously silent until now, suddenly spoke. Perhaps we should all calm down and give Natalie some time to think. This is a tremendous amount to process. My father rounded on him. Stay out of this, Steve. This is family business. Family. He responded quietly, but immediately recoiled when my father's furious glare met his as the clock ticked past 9. Jason began drafting transfer paperwork on his laptop. My mother called their personal attorney for advice on the precise wording, and Pam scrolled through real estate listings for my grandparents' house, excitedly discussing which walls she would demolish first. They had already unilaterally divided my inheritance, without my consent, meticulously planning how they would squander every dollar. Not once did anyone mention my grandparents' profound wishes or their cherished legacy. Not once did they inquire what I thought should be done with the money. At 10:30, my father printed out the crudely drafted transfer document and slid it across the coffee table to me, along with a pen. Sign it, he demanded, now. I picked up the paper and read it meticulously. The language was sweeping, effectively signing away all my rights to anything my grandparents had bequeathed me. In exchange, I would receive an unspecified percentage, to be determined later at my father's sole discretion. I put the paper down and took a deep, fortifying breath. No, the room fell into an unnerving silence. What did you just say? My father asked, his voice dangerously low. I said, no, I repeated, my voice stronger than I had anticipated. I will not sign this, or anything remotely like it. My grandparents entrusted me with their legacy for a reason. I fully intend to honor that trust. My mother launched into a furious tirade about my perceived ingratitude. Jason hurled names at me that I won't repeat. Aunt Pam began sobbing dramatically about her children's bleak future. Through it all, I remained seated, unmoving, the single word no forming an impenetrable shield around me. Finally, my father slammed his glass down so violently it cracked. That's enough, he roared. I always warned Dad you were not to be trusted. You manipulated them, just as you're attempting to manipulate us now with this innocent act. He stalked towards me, pointing his finger mere inches from my face. You have a choice to make right now, Natalie. Either you sign that paper and remain an integral part of this family, or you take your precious inheritance and consider yourself disowned. You cannot have both. The stark ultimatum hung heavy in the suffocating air between us. I scanned the faces of my family members, desperately searching for any glimmer of love or understanding. I found none. In that painful moment, a harsh truth crystallized. They had never genuinely perceived me as family. I was merely a means to an end, a potential source of capital, nothing more. I'm not signing, I stated firmly, rising to my feet. I'm sorry you feel this way, but I must respect what Grandma and Grandpa wanted. Then get out of my house, my father snarled. Pack your belongings and leave tonight. You are no longer welcome here. I live in my own apartment, I reminded him, my voice steady. I have for years. He laughed coldly. The apartment we co-signed for. Because your teacher's salary couldn't qualify for the lease? Check your agreement, Natalie, we own that building through one of our investment companies. Consider your lease terminated. My stomach plummeted. He was right. When I couldn't qualify for the apartment on my own, they had magnanimously offered to help. I had never realized they actually owned the building through some shadowy shell company. You have 30 minutes to pack essential items, my mother declared, checking her watch. The locks will be changed tomorrow. I stood frozen in shock. They were actually kicking me out, rendering me homeless. All over money they had done nothing to earn. The clock is ticking, Jason smirked. Better hurry. Sis, those 26 million won't keep you warm tonight. 30 minutes is a shockingly short time to pack up an entire life. I moved on autopilot, grabbing clothes, toiletries, important documents, and a few cherished sentimental items. My mind reeled with disbelief. How could they stoop to this? How could money transmute my family into complete strangers? My father stood sentinel in the doorway of my childhood bedroom, arms crossed, watching me like a guard ensuring a prisoner. Didn't pilfer anything during transfer. My mother remained downstairs, already on the phone with a real estate agent, discussing the immediate sale of my grandparents' house. Her voice drifted up the stairs. You were never truly part of this family anyway, my father said coldly as I stuffed clothes into a duffel bag. Your mother and I were on the verge of divorce before she became pregnant with you. You were the obligation that kept us together. The casual cruelty of his revelation staggered me. I had always sensed I was unwanted, but having it confirmed so brutally was an entirely different matter. We've squandered enough time and money on you, my mother added, appearing in the doorway. Your private school tuition, braces, summer camps, all those dance lessons you were terrible at. Consider this determination of our investment, investment, not love or care, but a financial investment, as if I were a poorly performing stock. Jason appeared next, leaning against the wall with a smug expression. You'll regret this when you have nothing and no one, he sneered. That money will evaporate faster than you think. And then what? You'll come crawling back and we'll remember how you chose cash over family. I zipped up my final bag, fiercely fighting back the rising tears. I was determined not to cry in front of them. I would not grant them that satisfaction. Is that everything? My father demanded. I glanced around the room that had been nominally mine since childhood, though I had only stayed here occasionally since college. The ballet trophies from elementary school, the framed diploma, the bookshelf overflowing with novels and textbooks, the photo albums. So much left behind. I can come back for the rest later, I said. My father laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound. There won't be a later. Whatever you leave tonight goes to charity or the trash or call. The chilling finality of it hit me. They were systematically erasing me from their lives entirely, all because I refused to give them money they had done absolutely nothing to earn. I snatched my grandmother's beloved quilt from the bed and crammed it into my already overflowing bag. I would not leave that behind. With 3 bags slung over my shoulders and another clutched in my hand, I made my way downstairs. No one offered to help. At the front door, I turned one last time. My family stood in a rigid line, their faces contorted in various expressions of anger, profound disappointment, and smug satisfaction. You might have money now, my mother said, her voice laced with venom, but family is forever. You'll eventually realize what you've foolishly thrown away. I'm not the one throwing away family, I replied quietly. You are. With that, I walked out the door and into the cool night air. The door slammed behind me with a disturbing finality. Standing beside my car in the driveway, the full weight of everything suddenly crashed down upon me. I was effectively homeless. My apartment was no longer mine. My family had disowned me. In the span of a few hours, I had gained millions, but simultaneously lost the only semblance of a support system I had ever known. Flawed as it was, I climbed into my car and finally allowed the torrent of tears to come. They streamed down my face as I gripped the steering wheel, great heaving sobs that convulsed my entire body. I wept for my grandparents, whose absence felt more acutely painful than ever. I cried for the family I had always yearned for, but had never truly possessed. Mostly, I cried for myself, suddenly adrift in a world that had transformed beyond recognition after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only minutes. I wiped my eyes and started the car. I had nowhere to go. Hotels required credit cards with available limits, which I didn't possess. Friends were an option, but explaining the bewildering situation seemed utterly impossible at nearly midnight. Then, I remembered the thick envelope Matthew had given me. Pulling it out, I found a set of keys with a familiar rabbit-shaped keychain. One my grandmother had cherished, the keys to my grandparents' house, the house that was now, unbelievably, mine. The drive to their neighborhood took 20 minutes. With each passing mile, I felt simultaneously drawn towards the profound comfort of their home, yet terrified of entering it without them there. I had deliberately avoided the house since the funeral, unable to confront the emptiness within. The porch light was on when I arrived, likely on a timer my grandfather had set. I sat in the driveway for several minutes, steeling my resolve. Finally, I grabbed one bag and approached the front door, the key trembling in my hand. The house smelled precisely the same, a comforting mixture of my grandmother's lemon verbena potpourri and the distinct wood polish my grandfather meticulously used on the furniture every Sunday. I flipped on the lights, half expecting to hear their voices calling a warm greeting from the kitchen. The silence was deafening. I made my way to the guest room I had always used. Dropping my bag onto the bed, everything was exactly as I had left it after my last weekend visit a month before the accident. The novel I had been reading still rested on the nightstand, a bookmark indicating my progress. Fresh towels were folded neatly on the dresser. placed there by my grandmother in anticipation of my next stay. The sheer thoughtfulness of it, the expectation of a continuity they couldn't have known would be so cruelly broken, undid me again. I sank onto the bed and wept until exhaustion claimed me. Falling asleep fully clothed on top of the covers, morning arrived with a disorienting brightness. For a fleeting moment, I half expected to smell coffee brewing and hear my grandfather's cheerful, off-key whistling from downstairs. Reality crashed back as I recognized the oppressive silence. They were gone, and somehow I had inherited both their fortune and their enemies, all in the guise of my own family. My phone had exploded overnight with a barrage of texts and missed calls, most from my father and mother, alternating between vicious threats and sudden, transparent attempts at reconciliation. "We can work this out if you'll just be reasonable." Read one message from my mother. My father was less subtle. "You have 24 hours to reconsider before we file suit." Jason sent a single, chilling text enjoying the big empty house, not for long. The last one sent a shiver down my spine. It sounded less like bluster and more like a genuine threat. I immediately forwarded it to Matthew, who responded without delay, "Stay exactly where you are. I'll be there in 30 minutes, do not open the door for anyone else." His urgency alarmed me, but also provided a strange, unexpected comfort. At least someone was unequivocally on my side. Matthew arrived precisely 30 minutes later, carrying a briefcase and a cardboard drink carrier with just steaming coffees. I ushered him into the kitchen, where we settled at the cozy breakfast nook my grandparents had used for casual meals. First things first, he began, sliding a coffee towards me. "Your family has already contacted 3 different attorneys about contesting the will. I fully anticipated this, and have prepared comprehensive countermeasures." I wrapped my hands around the warm cup. "They kicked me out last night. My father apparently owns my apartment building through some investment company." Matthew nodded grimly, typical Richard tactics, using leverage to force compliance. He began pulling documents from his briefcase. What he neglected to tell you is that your grandparents meticulously provided for this exact scenario. He showed me a deed to a small, charming cottage about 20 minutes outside town. Your grandmother purchased this property 5 years ago as an investment, but kept it hidden in a separate trust specifically for you. Richard remains completely unaware of its existence. You have a secure refuge if you require it. Relief washed over me like a cleansing wave. At least I wouldn't be truly homeless. But the notion of retreating to hide while my family circled like vultures didn't sit well with my burgeoning resolve. "There's something else you should know," Matthew continued, his gaze steady. "You are not alone in this. Your grandparents cultivated many loyal friends and associates, who were intimately aware of the difficult situation with your family." As if on cue, a gentle knock sounded at the back door. Matthew smiled. "That would be Carlos." "Carlos?" The name felt vaguely familiar. "Carlos Ramirez," Matthew explained. "He has served as your grandparents' estate manager and handyman for 15 years. He lives in the guest house at the back of the property." I entered the door to find a man in his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and genuinely kind eyes. He held his hat respectfully in his hands. "Miss Natalie," he said warmly, "I am deeply sorry about your grandparents. They were truly wonderful people. I noticed your car this morning and wanted to check if you needed anything." His simple, heartfelt kindness nearly brought me to tears again. "Thank you, Carlos. I'm a bit overwhelmed, to be honest." Carlos nodded understandingly. "Mr. Harold and Mrs. Elizabeth worried about that. They specifically asked me to look after you if anything ever happened to them. The house, the grounds, everything is meticulously maintained. I've been diligently keeping watch." Matthew invited Carlos to join us at the table. Over the next hour, Carlos shared intimate stories about my grandparents that I had never heard, painting a vivid portrait of 2 individuals who were deeply respected and beloved by those who worked for them, not just their entitled family members. "Your father and brother," Carlos said carefully, "they came here after the funeral. When no one else was around, they took things, watches, jewelry, some electronics. I have it all on the security cameras." My stomach clenched. My father had installed an extensive security system for my grandparents years ago, ostensibly for their protection. I had completely forgotten about the cameras. Carlos shook his head sadly. "They didn't realize Mr. Harold had me update the system last year. He didn't trust the old one your father put in. Said it had too many blind spots." Matthew made a mental note. "That footage could prove exceptionally useful if they pursue legal action." "There's more," Carlos continued. "Mrs. Elizabeth meticulously kept detailed journals. She documented absolutely everything, especially family visits and interactions. They are in her study." I followed Carlos to my grandmother's small study. Just off the main hallway, a built-in bookcase held dozens of leather-bound journals. each meticulously dated. Carlos pulled one from the shelf and handed it to me. "This one mentions when your father asked for money last year," he said, "for some investment opportunity." I opened the journal immediately, recognizing my grandmother's elegant handwriting. May 15th, it read, "Richard visited today. First time in 7 months. Did not inquire about our health or lives. Immediately launched into a pitch about a cryptocurrency investment requiring $250. When Harold refused, Richard became hostile. Accused us of preferring Natalie. Said we were naive to trust her when she only visits to secure her inheritance. Could not be more wrong. Natalie has never asked for money. Has no idea of our net worth. Brings food every Sunday and stays to eat with us." Richard left without finishing his coffee. Harold very upset afterward. I read entry after entry, each one meticulously documenting years of strikingly similar interactions. My father incessantly demanding money, my brother pitching absurd, ill-conceived business ideas, my mother making thinly veiled comments about their modest lifestyle being an embarrassment to her social standing. In stark contrast, my visits were described with genuine warmth and affection. My grandmother noted the small gifts I had brought, the meaningful conversations we had shared, the simple help I had offered around the house. She saw me in a way my parents never had. As I read, the doorbell chimed. Carlos went to answer it, returning moments later with an older woman in a practical dress and cardigan. Dorothy Reynolds. He introduced her, "Your grandparents' housekeeper for 20 years. Dorothy hugged me tightly. "You look just like Elizabeth when she was young. She was so incredibly proud of you." Over the next several hours, more people arrived. Rosa Martinez, my grandparents' sharp business partner, who possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of Alexander logistics and graciously offered to guide me through understanding the company. George Patel, their astute investment advisor, who brought comprehensive portfolios, meticulously detailing how my inheritance was structured. Sarah Johnson, their kind neighbor for 30 years, who arrived bearing a homemade casserole and heartwarming anecdotes about neighborhood gatherings I had attended as a child. Each person who arrived brought not only vital information but also genuine affection. They had all deeply loved my grandparents and, by extension, profoundly cared about me and my well-being. While sifting through my grandmother's desk, Dorothy discovered a cleverly hidden compartment containing letters from my father spanning decades. Each one was a desperate plea for money, some containing thinly veiled threats about severing my access to them if they refused. She also kept this, Dorothy said, handing me a USB drive. Security footage from after the funeral. "Your mother was going through Elizabeth's jewelry before the reception even ended. She took several valuable pieces, claiming Elizabeth would have wanted her to have them. My grandparents, it seemed, had been meticulously documenting my family's behavior for years. Perhaps knowing this day would inevitably come, they had created not just a financial safety net for me, but a formidable network of unwavering support and irrefutable evidence that would unequivocally protect their wishes." Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, as Matthew was patiently guiding me through the intricate financial documents, my phone pinged with a text from Jason. "Hope you're enjoying Grandma and Grandpa's house while you can. Dad, Mom, Aunt Pam, Uncle Steve, and I are coming over tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock to collect what rightfully belongs to us. Better not try to stop us or things will get ugly." I showed the message to Matthew, whose expression darkened. "Threats and potential breaking and entering," he muttered. "I believe it's time to activate the final part of your grandparents' meticulously crafted plan." He made several phone calls in quick succession, speaking cryptically about urgent meetings and irrefutable evidence. When he finished, he turned to me, his expression resolute. "Your grandparents anticipated this exact scenario, Natalie. They knew Richard and the others would never accept their decision. They prepared for it. Tomorrow morning we will be ready for them. But tonight, I strongly suggest you review these materials so you fully understand exactly what you are fighting for." He gestured to the formidable pile of journals, financial documents, and legal papers spread across the dining room table. "Your grandparents built more than just wealth. They built relationships founded on trust and profound respect. That, Natalie, is their true legacy to you." As everyone except Carlos departed for the evening, promising to return the next morning, a strange sense of calm settled over me. I was not alone in this impending battle. My grandparents had ensured that. They had given me not just their money, but their enduring wisdom and their devoted community. I spent the entire evening immersed in reading through journals and financial reports, gaining an entirely new understanding of my grandparents. They had been strategic, thoughtful, and meticulously thorough in their planning. Everything they had done was deliberate, including their choice of heir. For the first time since civil reading, I felt a surge of strength. Feeling truly equal to the profound responsibility they had entrusted me with, I would not let them down as I prepared for bed. Another text message arrived from Jason. Better sleep with one eye open, sis. Tomorrow you'll see what happens to people who steal from this family. Instead of succumbing to fear, I felt a renewed resolve hardening within me. Tomorrow would indeed reveal what happens when people attempt to steal from family, but decidedly not in the way Jason imagined. I woke early the next morning, a blend of anxiety and firm determination coursing through me. By 8 a.m., Matthew had arrived with fresh coffee and pastries, along with a thick folder of legal documents. These are restraining orders, ready to be filed if necessary, he explained. And these are cease and desist letters addressing the specific threats Jason made. Dorothy arrived next, immediately taking command of the kitchen to prepare breakfast. The familiar, comforting aromas of bacon and coffee filled the house, offering a strange solace before the impending storm. By 9:30, the house had filled with supporters. Carlos positioned himself silently by the front door, a vigilant guardian. Rosa Martinez, my grandparents' astute business partner, set up her laptop at the dining table, prepared to present financial evidence if needed. Dorothy bustled around, ensuring everyone had coffee and food, her very presence a tangible connection to my grandparents' inherent hospitality. At 9:45, cars began pulling into the long driveway. First, my father's gleaming black luxury sedan, then my mother's pristine white SUV, followed by Aunt Pam and Uncle Steve's midlife crisis convertible, and finally Jason's impractical sports car, which he could only afford because my parents paid his rent. "They're early," Matthew observed dryly, trying to catch us off guard. As the doorbell rang aggressively, followed by insistent pounding, Matthew nodded to Carlos, who calmly opened the door. My father stood on the threshold, momentarily surprised to see someone other than me answering. Behind him, the rest of my family clustered together, their expressions ranging from seething anger to smug satisfaction. "Where is Natalie?" my father demanded, his voice sharp. "This is family business." Carlos remained an immovable presence. "Miss Natalie is expecting you. Please, come in." My family filed into the foyer, stopping abruptly when they saw the gathering in the living room. I stood squarely in the center, Matthew positioned slightly behind me to my right. "What is this?" my mother asked, her voice brittle with annoyance. "You've brought outsiders into a private family matter." Before I could even formulate a response, the front door opened again and 3 more people entered. First came Judge Robert Henderson, a tall, dignified man in his 70s who had been a dear friend of my grandparents for decades. He was followed by Police Chief Maria Williams, whose daughter's education had been generously supported by my grandparents' charitable foundation. Last came Thomas Jang, my grandparents' financial advisor for over 20 years. My father's face visibly paled at the sight of Judge Henderson. The judge had ruled unequivocally against him in a significant business dispute years earlier, a case my father had unsuccessfully attempted to influence through his social connections. "Robert," he stammered, attempting a jovial tone that fell completely flat. "What brings you here?" The judge's expression remained stern. "I am here at the explicit request of Harold and Elizabeth Alexander, conveyed through their attorney, Matthew Goldstein. They asked me, in the unfortunate event of their deaths, to serve as an impartial witness to any family disputes regarding their estate." My mother turned to Chief Williams. "This is preposterous. We're here to collect family heirlooms that rightfully belong to us. Why is law enforcement present?" The chief smiled thinly. "I am here as a friend of the Alexander family, not in an official capacity. Unless, of course, someone commits a crime, in which case my official duties would naturally take precedence." The implied threat was not lost on any of us. As if on cue, the back door opened, and 6 more people entered, forming a supportive semicircle behind me. They were longtime, loyal employees from my grandparents' business, individuals who had known my father since his childhood, and had personally witnessed his transformation from an entitled son to a largely absent family member. "You've got to be kidding me," Jason muttered under his breath. "Is this supposed to intimidate us?" I stepped forward, finding immense strength in the collective support surrounding me. "I know precisely why you're here. You fundamentally believe you're entitled to my grandparents' estate, despite their explicit wishes. You think you can bully or threaten me into surrendering what you covet." My father's face hardened. "Those old fools were manipulated. We are simply here to rectify that injustice." From behind me, Thomas Jang spoke up, his voice calm and clear. "Actually, Richard, I possess comprehensive documentation of every attempt you've made to access your parents' assets over the past 2 decades. He opened a folder. "This includes the unauthorized transfer attempt from their retirement account in 2016, the forged check incident in 2018, And your attempt to have Elizabeth declared legally incompetent last year after she refused to fund Jason's failed cryptocurrency venture. My father's face flushed crimson. But that's taken entirely out of context. Rosa Martinez stepped forward, tablet in hand. I also have meticulous records of the company loan you never repaid. Richard, $200,000 borrowed in 2012 for your lavish vacation home in Aspen. Your parents, despite their ability, never pursued repayment. One by one, my grandparents' friends and associates methodically presented irrefutable evidence of my family's relentless attempts to extract money over the years, starkly contrasted with their minimal, often self-serving involvement in my grandparents' actual lives. Aunt Pam, who had been quietly fuming, suddenly whirled towards me. You ungrateful little snake. You turned our parents against us. Poisoned them with your lies. Judge Henderson cleared his throat pointedly. Actually, Mrs. Davis, I personally reviewed the extensive video journals Elizabeth kept. There was absolutely no external influence. Your parents were quite clear and explicit about their reasoning. This is all very theatrical, my mother said dismissively, waving a dismissive hand. But it changes nothing. We will contest the will. We **When Matthew stepped forward. I have prepared comprehensive documentation for all of you. It includes evidence that would become public record if you choose to contest the will. He handed each family member a thick, heavy envelope. This includes banking records, text messages, emails, and compelling video evidence of your interactions with Harold and Elizabeth over the past decade. I strongly encourage you to review it thoroughly before making any decisions about legal action. Uncle Steve, who had remained silent throughout the entire exchange, nervously opened his envelope and began to read. His face grew increasingly pale after a moment. He gently touched Aunt Pam's arm. We should go, he said quietly, his voice strained. This is not a fight we can possibly win. She shrugged him off angrily. My father isn't giving up so easily. My father, however, had gone completely still after scanning the contents of his envelope. There were meticulous records of business dealings he had clearly hoped would remain private, along with transcripts of cruel, damning comments he had made about his parents when he believed no one was listening. Chief Williams stepped forward, her presence commanding. I should also mention that this property is under 24-hour security surveillance. Any attempt to remove items without explicit permission would constitute theft. Carlos nodded. The new system records everything, both inside and out, all securely backed up to cloud storage. As my family slowly absorbed the damning implications, I walked to the sideboard and picked up a stack of documents Matthew had prepared for me. These are cease and desist orders regarding the threats you have made, I said, passing them directly to Jason. These, I continued, handing papers to my father, are notices that I am fully aware of the items taken from this house after the funeral, and I expect their immediate return. My mother began to protest, but I cut her off firmly. And these, I said, giving her the final document, are the terms under which I am willing to maintain any relationship with all of you going forward. They include unequivocal respect for my grandparents' wishes and an immediate end to all attempts to contest the will. The room fell into a profound silence as my family slowly grasped the untenable position they were in. Not only had my grandparents legally protected their decisions with meticulous foresight, but they had also anticipated and meticulously documented every conceivable challenge. The formidable community of support they had cultivated now stood firmly with me, presenting a united front my family had simply not expected. My father was the first to break the silence. This is not over, he said, but the distinct tremor of defeat in his voice suggested otherwise. Actually, Richard, it is, Judge Henderson replied, his voice authoritative. Your parents were meticulous in their planning. Any judge in this county would uphold their wishes based on the overwhelming evidence they compiled. One by one, my family members slowly retreated towards the door, their earlier threats dissolving into impotent rage in the face of the undeniable evidence against them. Jason glared at me as he passed. This isn't the end, he muttered venomously. Perhaps not, I replied calmly, meeting his gaze, but it is the end of you taking advantage of this family. My grandparents saw who you really are. That is why we are all here today. As they sullenly filed out to their cars, the palpable tension in the room dissipated like mist. Dorothy immediately began serving fresh coffee and pastries, as if to richly cleanse the space of the negative energy. The others gathered around me, offering heartfelt congratulations and unwavering support. I felt strangely empty, neither triumphant nor devastated. I had stood my ground, protected my grandparents' cherished wishes, but in the process, I had irrevocably lost what little remained of my biological family. The victory felt profoundly hollow. Judge Henderson seemed to sense my inner conflict. He placed a gentle, comforting hand on my shoulder. Your grandparents would be incredibly proud. Natalie, not just of what you accomplished today, but how you accomplished it with dignity and unwavering principle. Rosa nodded in agreement. You are more like them than anyone else in the family. That is precisely why they trusted you with everything. As my biological family's cars finally disappeared down the driveway, I realized I had crossed an irreversible threshold. The family I had known was irrevocably gone, but in their place stood a community bound not by blood, but by genuine respect and shared values, the true legacy my grandparents had built over a lifetime. It wasn't the family I was born into, but perhaps it was the family I was always meant to have. 6 months dissolved into a blur of intensive learning and profound adjustment. The initial weeks following the confrontation proved the most challenging, filled with an overwhelming deluge of legal paperwork, complex financial decisions, and the painful, drawn-out process of accepting that my biological family had unequivocally chosen money over any genuine relationship. They made a few half-hearted attempts to reconcile, but invariably, only when they desperately needed something, proving conclusively that nothing had fundamentally changed. With the expert guidance from Matthew and my grandparents' astute advisors, I established the Elizabeth and Harold Alexander Foundation for Education, dedicating a substantial $10 million to supporting underprivileged students and schools within our community. The foundation focused particularly on arts education and vocational training, areas my grandparents had always passionately believed were severely undervalued. Surprisingly too many who assumed I'd abandon it once wealthy. I returned to teaching kindergarten. My classroom at Sunshine Elementary transformed into a vibrant showcase of what was possible with proper resources. I personally funded new books, art supplies, and cutting-edge technology that the school's budget could never cover. Every child received healthy snacks daily and warm winter coats if they needed them. Small expenses for me that created monumental differences in their young lives. Under Rosa Martinez's invaluable mentorship, I diligently learned the foundational basics of running Alexander Logistics. While I chose not to assume an active management role, I ensured the company steadfastly maintained my grandparents' core values, including their pioneering profit-sharing program for employees and exceptionally generous retiring NT benefits. The business continued to thrive, providing stable, meaningful employment for over 100 people in our community. My grandparents' house, once painfully empty, gradually blossomed into a true home again. I transitioned from the guest room into the master bedroom, though it took many months before I could sleep there without feeling like an intruder. With Carlos's unwavering help, I renovated the expansive basement into a vibrant community space for foundation events and educational programs. Dorothy still came 3 times a week, steadfastly refusing to fully retire, despite my persistent insistence that she had more than earned it. My biological family made occasional, predictable attempts to re-establish contact, though their underlying motives were always glaringly transparent. My father called when his company faced debilitating cash flow problems, hinting broadly about short-term loans with handsome returns. My mother reached out when her social circle learned about my foundation, suddenly expressing an ardent desire to serve on the board. Jason texted when his latest venture inevitably failed, asking for startup capital. Aunt Pam called around the holidays, suggesting that family should be together, especially family with large houses suitable for hosting gatherings. Beach time, I politely but firmly maintained my established boundaries, referring them to the precise terms I had outlined after the confrontation. I would consider a relationship based solely on mutual respect and genuine care, but never one predicated on financial advantage. None of them could meet those simple, fundamental terms. Instead, I meticulously built new traditions with the chosen family my grandparents had so carefully cultivated. Sunday dinners continued, now hosted by me with a rotating cast of cherished guests including Rosa, Matthew, Carlos, and his wonderful family, Dorothy, and countless others who had been an integral part of my grandparents' close circle. We celebrated holidays together, shared life's milestones, and steadfastly supported each other through every difficulty. It was not the family I was born into, but it was a community bound by something infinitely stronger than DNA, shared values, and genuine, unconditional affection. One crisp autumn morning, eerily similar to the day of their accident, I visited my grandparents' graves for the first time since the funeral. I brought fresh flowers and sat on the small bench nearby, finally ready to have the profound conversation I had so painstakingly avoided. I'm trying my absolute best to honor what you built, I told them, feeling only slightly foolish for speaking aloud. The foundation is truly making a difference. 3 students have already received full college scholarships who otherwise couldn't have gone. Your employees still speak about you With such profound respect, a gentle breeze rustled the nearby trees, sending golden leaves spiraling downward. It was precisely the kind of beautiful fall day my grandmother had cherished, perfect for baking and reading by the fireplace. I wish you were here to witness it all, I continued, my voice soft. I have so many questions about the decisions you made, the investments you chose, the countless people you quietly helped. But I'm figuring it out step by painstaking step. In the months since inheriting, I had uncovered numerous quiet charities my grandparents had anonymously supported. Children whose daunting medical bills they had paid. Families whose homes they had saved from foreclosure. Employees whose children they had put through college, all without any public recognition or desire for praise. Thank you for trusting me, I whispered. I understand now why you made the choice you did. It was never truly about the money, it was about values. About using resources for something meaningful rather than for status or power. As I sat there, memories washed over me, not with the sharp, searing pain of recent grief, but with a bittersweet appreciation for the precious time we had shared. I vividly remembered my grandfather patiently teaching me to fish, my grandmother meticulously showing me how to bake her famous apple pie, both of them unfailingly attending every single school play and graduation when my parents were simply too busy. The inheritance had never been primarily about money. It had been about entrusting me with their invaluable legacy, their profound values, their inspiring vision of what wealth could truly accomplish when utilized with purpose and compassion. The very next day, I hosted the foundation's first major event, a scholarship ceremony for 20 deserving high school seniors who would receive full college funding. As I watched these bright, determined young people accept opportunities that would fundamentally alter their life trajectories, I felt my grandparents' presence strongly, almost palpably. Among the recipients was Maria Vasquez, a brilliant young woman who reminded me uncannily of myself at that age, full of untapped potential, but severely limited by financial constraints. She planned to become a teacher to give back to her community, just as she had been so generously supported. As the event concluded, Maria approached me, tears glistening in her eyes. My parents both worked 2 jobs, she said, her voice trembling. No one in my family has ever gone to college. This changes everything, not just for me, but for my younger siblings who now see it as possible. In that profound moment, I understood completely what my grandparents had been building all along. Not just a business or a fortune, but a boundless legacy of positive impact. A ripple effect that would continue long after they were gone. They had trusted me to amplify that effect, to carry their values forward in ways they would never physically see but had so clearly envisioned. The money had indeed revealed true colors, starkly showing me who valued ephemeral wealth over enduring relationships, but it had also unveiled a vibrant community of genuine connection. People who had loved my grandparents for who they truly were, not what they owned. That, I realized, was a true inheritance, infinitely more valuable than any dollar amount. As I moved forward, I continued teaching, diligently running the foundation, and steadily learning the intricate workings of the business. The wealth undeniably allows me to amplify good work, but it doesn't define me. I still live a relatively simple life, drive a practical car, and spend my weekends volunteering rather than indulging in endless shopping. My grandparents would undoubtedly approve, I often think. They always said money was merely a tool, not a goal. I finally, truly understand what they meant. What's your own experience with family and inheritance? Have you ever had to summon the courage to stand up to pressure from loved ones to do what you instinctively knew was right? I genuinely love to hear your stories and reflections. Remember, family is fundamentally about love and respect, not obligation or opportunistic advantage. I wish you the unwavering strength to honor your own values, whatever profound challenges you may face.